My name is Rhea Marlowe, 38, born with an inconvenient tendency to remember every clause I've ever signed. For 14 years, I built a reputation at Creed Energy as the person who read the fine print when everyone else chased headlines. Calm, careful, invisible, that's what I was supposed to be. Until this morning. The boardroom lights glared against glass walls, and the sound of cameras clicking filled the air like distant gunfire. A woman from the Department of Energy stood at the head of the table, her silver hair pinned into something that did not move. She spoke evenly, without looking at anyone in particular. Who approved terminating the project owner? No one answered. Across the table, Jonathan Creed, our CEO, tried to smile. His lips twitched, but his voice didn't follow. Behind him, a massive screen displayed the words, "Contract Status," suspended for a moment. The room froze. The microphones were still live. The press had been invited to celebrate a $300 million energy partnership, and instead, they were watching it collapse in real time. I could almost hear the panic spreading through the company's servers, emails firing off, messages deleted, someone somewhere realizing what had gone wrong. I wasn't there to see it. I was in my apartment on Beacon Hill, barefoot, coffee in hand, sunlight bleeding through the blinds. The TV murmured behind me. Creed Energy's federal contract temporarily suspended pending verification of project ownership. My phone buzzed non-stop messages from colleagues, a few from numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't open any of them. Instead, I turned down the volume and stared at the little red banner scrolling across the bottom of the screen. 300 million project on hold clearance issue under review. Outside, a garbage truck hissed down the street. Inside, my coffee had gone cold. They were still looking for me, though they didn't know it yet. 24 hours earlier, I'd been fired for wearing the wrong shoes. Now, the project they built their year around the one I had legally authored had stopped breathing, and all I'd done was close my laptop. The call began like any other Monday briefing, 30 people stacked in tiny boxes, cameras on, smiles rehearsed. I had my notes ready, compliance figures polished, charts queued. The new CEO, Jonathan Creed, had insisted on running every major update through him for optics. I'd learned early that optics was his favorite word, right after synergy and legacy. He joined 5 minutes late, immaculate as always, blue tie, perfect lighting, background blurred to hide the chaos of his home office. His voice had that practiced calm too smooth, like glass stretched thin. "Before we continue," he said, pausing mid-sentence of my presentation, "we need to address something." The air in the call shifted, every small square of face tilted toward the camera. "Waiting. Rhea," he continued, "your attire during last week's Fremont site visit was non-compliant. Open-toed shoes. That's a direct violation of Section 14B. For a second, I thought he was joking. Then I saw the look in his eyes sharp, performative, feeding on the silence. I glanced down at the same leather sandals I'd worn for 6 years of inspections. Approved, documented, printed in the onboarding manual he'd never read. No HR representative, I asked. He smiled. "Not necessary. This isn't disciplinary, it's termination. Effective immediately." The screen stayed still. No one breathed. My team's icons blinked like eyes afraid to move. 14 years. Countless audits, every contract sealed under my name, and it ended in a 5-minute call led by a man who quoted leadership books between mirror selfies. I felt the heat rise behind my ears, but said nothing. My cursor hovered over the leave meeting button. Jonathan leaned back, satisfied, his reflection flickering in the glass pane behind him. "Optics matter," he added, as if the phrase could excuse cowardice. I looked straight into the camera. Steady, unflinching. "Understood," I said. Then I clicked Leave Meeting. The screen went black. The silence that followed wasn't defeat. It was focus sharpening, like a lens adjusting before the real picture came into view. That night, The city outside my window hummed with low rain and traffic, the kind of rhythm that usually helped me think. Not this time. My desk was a battlefield of binders and flash drives, each labeled from years of contracts and audits. Somewhere inside those pages was the reason I hadn't felt anger yet, just certainty. I found the thick blue binder marked DOE 12 SO 348. My fingers hesitated on the edge of the paper. That muscle memory of knowing exactly where the truth lives. Page 2Y14. The clause I'd written myself 3 years earlier. Clause 9.4a Federal Project Owner Authorization, non-transferable without recertification. Minimum 6 months. I traced the line once, slowly. Every federal subcontract over $5 million required a named project owner. The clearance, the signatory rights, the direct contact with the Department of Energy all tied to one individual. Me. My name. Printed in black ink and verified through a dozen federal background checks. Stared back at me. Rhea Marlowe. Tier 3A authorization. Active through March 2027. Without that clearance, the company couldn't sign, couldn't submit, couldn't even open the encrypted files that started the project. They could delete me from payroll, but not from the Federal Registry. I leaned back in my chair, the sound of rain thick against the glass. No lawsuits, no confrontation. Just the weight of a signature that outlived the arrogance of the man who thought he could erase it. I slid 3 notarized copies into a fireproof folder, then exported the registry confirmation from the DOE portal to my private legal drive. A quiet archive, time-stamped, certified, untouchable. The apartment lights flickered as thunder rolled through the skyline. I poured another cup of coffee and watched the screen go dark. My reflection ghosted against it. They'd fired me to make a statement. I didn't need to make one back. The paperwork already spoke louder than any words could. And by morning, every system in that building would discover exactly who they'd tried to replace. Morning came gray and sharp, the kind that makes the whole city feel half awake. I brewed tea, fed Nico, my aging golden retriever, and turned on the small radio in the kitchen. Somewhere downtown, Creed Energy was polishing its public image. The broadcast announced it like a victory parade today. Creed Energy celebrates the launch of its $300 million Department of Energy partnership. I could almost see at the banners, the catered pastries, the PR interns practicing applause. Inside that building, the tempo would be frantic. I knew the choreography by heart, executives checking their reflections in the elevator doors, project managers rehearsing key phrases, and assistants lining up glossy folders for the kickoff ceremony. Only one packet would be missing. The project owner. Confirmation packet. At that very moment, someone in legal would be asking HR for the latest registry printout. HR would shrug and say operations handled it. Ops would check SharePoint and find an empty upload folder. Then, an email would begin its slow climb through the hierarchy subject line, missing file, the kind that starts quiet and ends in panic. I carried my tea to the desk and powered on my laptop. My login to the DOE system hadn't expired. The secure portal opened with a soft chime. On the main screen, a single line waited under the active contracts list, primary signatory Rhea Marlowe. I stared at it for a moment. That one name was a fuse. They could decorate the stage, print the press kits, issue statements about innovation and transparency, but none of it could move without that clearance key. Nico wandered to my side, dropping his ball at my feet, tail thumping softly against the rug. I bent down to scratch his ear, the radio still humming with their celebration. "Go ahead," I murmured. "Let them have their moment." Outside, church bells marked the hour. Inside, my screen stayed open, quiet and waiting, just like me. By 9 o'clock. The glass tower on Devonshire Street was already pulsing with caffeine and rehearsed optimism. Staff hurried between floors, adjusting badges, fixing ties, polishing their smiles. In the top-floor boardroom, Jonathan Creed leaned against the long window overlooking Boston Harbor, trying to look calm while his assistant straightened the cue cards for his speech. The call came at 9:06 a.m., sharp. It wasn't routed through reception or PR. It came directly to the main line in legal. Megan Alcott, the department's youngest liaison, answered, voice still bright from her third coffee. Creed Energy, this is Megan. Department of Energy. Washington office, said a voice, firm and clipped. We're reviewing the final certification chain for contract 120348. Who authorized the removal of the registered project owner? Megan blinked. Unsure. One moment. Please. She pressed mute, turned to her supervisor and mouthed, They're asking about the signatory. Within seconds, Jonathan was patched in. His tone came out too casual, the kind that always hinted at panic hiding under confidence. Good morning. This is Jonathan Creed, CEO. We, recently reassigned our compliance director. Routine restructuring. Reassignments, the caller interrupted, require federal confirmation. We have no record of that. The DOE registry still lists Rhea Marlowe as the primary signatory. Until we receive verbal verification from her, the contract remains in review. Jonathan's jaw tightened. That shouldn't be necessary. It's required, said the voice. We'll follow up shortly. Then the line went dead. By 9:30, every inbox across legal, ops, and executive relations pinged with the same subject line, stamped in red, urgent verbal verification required R. Marlowe. The message was brief, bureaucratic, impossible to ignore. It cited clause references, timestamps, and the federal contact chain. Megan reread the line 3 times, whispering it under her breath as though it might disappear. Around her, people started to move faster, emails multiplying, voices dropping, somewhere near the elevator. The head of HR muttered, Why is her name still in the system? No one had an answer. But in Washington, someone already knew exactly why. At 10:45 a.m., the elevator doors opened onto the 31st floor, and 3 officials stepped out, 2 men in dark suits, 1 woman in gray. No one needed introductions. Their badges gleamed with the gold seal of the Department of Energy. Conversation stopped mid-sentence as they passed. The audit room had been staged for Triumph white tablecloths, company banners, bottled water with printed logos. But the air inside was heavy, stale with nerves. Jonathan Creed stood at the head of the table, smiling too hard, his voice almost rehearsed. Welcome to Creed Energy, he said. We're honored to the lead auditor, Elaine Morris, raised a hand. Her tone was measured, courteous, but carried the weight of law. We'll begin verification before remarks. Please present your named security liaison. For a second, the silence felt physical. HR's director, Paul Levine, cleared his throat. She's no longer employed. Morris didn't look up from her tablet, and the replacement, Paul, hesitated. Jonathan spoke quickly. We've reassigned her responsibilities internally. Everything's in order. The faintest pause, then the quiet click of a keyboard. Morris's voice remained even. Your DOE registry still lists Rhea Marlowe as primary signatory. Without an approved transfer, your authorization is inactive. Jonathan's smile faltered. That's impossible, sir, she interrupted, eyes lifting to meet his, calm and sharp. Then your contract is non-compliant. Behind her. One of the other auditors tapped a command into his laptop. The projector's blue glow flickered, replaced by a crimson banner that washed across the screen. Contract status suspended. The room froze. 14 months of preparation budgets, briefings, investor promises unraveled in a heartbeat. A camera flash went off, catching the shock on every face. Jonathan's pen slipped from his hand and clattered onto the table. No one moved to pick it up. Morris gathered her files, sliding them into a neat folder. We'll await formal correspondence once compliance is restored, she said, standing. The door closed softly behind her. The silence that followed had shape and temperature dense, electric, irreversible, and though no one dared to speak it, every person in that room knew whose name had done this. By noon, The entire building had turned into a whisper. The open-plan floors, once filled with polite chatter and the sound of keyboards, had gone eerily quiet, punctuated only by the hum of the HVAC and the occasional ring of a phone that no one dared to answer. On Slack, panic unfolded in real time. Threads bloomed and vanished, each one a digital fire doused by fear. Anyone know what happened with DOE audit suspended? Is that confirmed? Do we still have funding? Every message ended the same way, deleted before replies could pile up. In legal, the scramble was desperate. Junior attorneys hunched over their screens, drafting recovery statements no one would ever publish. The head of PR stood by the glass wall, phone pressed to her ear, eyes fixed on the storm rolling in across the harbor. She was deleting every pre-scheduled post for the afternoon, the ones congratulating the visionary leadership of Creed Energy. By 2, investors were calling. By 3, the board had assembled in the executive suite, faces gray and drawn. The press had already picked up the story: federal contract suspended pending clearance verification. The market answered with silence, and then a slow downward slide. When Jonathan finally entered the boardroom, he looked smaller, the crisp lines of his suit undone by exhaustion. No one rose to greet him. The chairman spoke quietly, almost kindly. "You'll need to step back until compliance is restored." By evening, his office light was off. His nameplate disappeared before the cleaning staff made their rounds. Across town, I sat by the window, the city washed in rain and red taillights. The sound was steady, rhythmic, like breathing. I opened the blinds wider and watched the drops slide down the glass, tracing crooked paths through the reflection of the skyline. No champagne, no satisfaction, just the quiet sense of something correcting itself. Gravity, maybe, or truth. In the distance, thunder rolled over the Charles River, low and steady. I let it fill the room until all that was left was the sound of rain and the faint echo of silence doing what anger never could. The next morning arrived clean and colorless, the kind of pale light Boston reserves for early winter. I woke before the alarm, the apartment quiet except for the faint ticking of the radiator. Nico snored somewhere near the couch. The storm had passed, leaving the city rinsed and still. When I opened my laptop, the first thing that appeared wasn't a headline or a message from anyone at Creed Energy. It was an encrypted email flagged secure transmission, Federal Liaison Channel. The sender's name made me pause. Fairmont Strategic Partners, D.C. I clicked. The message unfolded like a formal letter, polite but unambiguous. Ms. Marlowe, in light of recent DOE proceedings, we would like to extend an offer of independent consultancy. Position: DOE compliance oversight. Tier 3A authorization. Rate: 320 AHR variable by duration. Start date flexible. Clause 5.1. Engagement prohibits collaboration with Creed Energy or its subsidiaries. I read it twice, not out of disbelief, but to feel the weight of every word. There was no flattery, no small talk, just acknowledgement, clean, professional, earned. I scrolled down to the contract attachment. The Fairmont letterhead was simple black serif font, gold seal in the corner. Near the bottom, a space waited for my digital signature. I thought briefly of Jonathan, of that call where he said optics matter. He was right, just not in the way he imagined. Optics did matter: how one carried silence, how one left a room without slamming the door. I picked up my stylus and signed, one stroke, smooth and final. The confirmation window blinked, green contract executed, outside. Sunlight caught on the wet pavement, scattering gold across the street. I closed the laptop and leaned back, feeling the quiet settle again. Vindication didn't arrive with applause. It came as an email, a clause, and a rate that spelled respect more clearly than any apology ever could. By midweek, a photo started making the rounds through the company's private chats, a grainy image taken from behind a glass partition. It showed Jonathan Creed's office, stripped bare. The desk was empty except for a half-finished bottle of water and a stack of HR forms. His chair was gone. The plaque with his name had been unscrewed from the door, leaving 2 small holes in the wood where the screws had been. Someone had snapped the photo before facilities sealed the room. In the background, the motivational poster that once read, "Leadership through excellence," lay slumped in the trash bin, the corner torn, the glass cracked. There was no memo, no farewell email, no company-wide announcement thanking him for his service. The PR team scrubbed his name from the website within hours, by noon. His biography was gone from the executive page, his LinkedIn title already replaced with a vague consultant seeking new opportunities. Employees whispered in corridors and group chats, careful not to speak too loud. Did you hear someone typed, "He's just gone"? Another message followed a few minutes later. She didn't even lift a finger. Then, finally, she didn't have to. At my desk at home, I saw the same photo forwarded to me by a friend still inside the company. No caption, just the image. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The city outside was alive again, buses grumbling along Beacon Street, the air clear after the rain. I moved to the window and watched people hurry past, umbrellas folded, coffee cups in hand. They had no idea what the photo meant or how easily power can erase itself when it forgets what sustains it. I closed my phone and let the quiet take over. Somewhere, the company was rewriting history, pretending it had all been procedural, inevitable. Maybe it was. All I knew was that the office in that photograph wasn't empty because I had won. It was empty because the truth had finally been left alone long enough to do its job. Morning light spread across my desk like a slow tide, warm and weightless. The city outside had already begun its rhythm, the sound of tires on wet pavement, a distant horn, someone laughing on the street below. My apartment smelled faintly of coffee and paper. For the first time in months, the air didn't feel borrowed. It felt like mine. On the table lay my new badge, gold trim, no company logo, no hollow slogan, just my name etched cleanly in black Rhea Marlowe Primary Liaison, Federal Energy Task Force. The metal caught the sunlight and threw it back, a quiet shimmer across the wall. I logged into the secure portal. The DOE dashboard opened with a single notification, Authorization Tier 3A active. The same clearance that once tethered me to Creed Energy now sat in my hands, untethered, unclaimed by anyone but me. My pay rate was double. The dress code section had been replaced with a single-line professional discretion encouraged. I almost laughed. I scrolled through the day's briefing's new projects. Clean audits, people who understood that compliance wasn't a cage, but a backbone. No posturing, no optics, just work that mattered. In the Notes app beside my laptop, I typed one line and let it sit there for a moment before saving it. They fired me for my outfit. I closed the deal they needed. It wasn't bitterness. It was documentation like every other record I'd ever kept. My phone buzzed. A new assignment had been approved, one involving multi-state oversight. The briefing time was set for Monday. I smiled. Not out of triumph, but out of something quieter, steadier, a kind of peace that didn't need to announce itself. Outside, sunlight turned the Charles River into glass. Nico stretched by the window, sighing as if even he could feel the shift. I reached down to scratch behind his ear, then picked up my badge, the metal cool against my fingers. For once, I didn't have to prove anything. The system had spoken in its own language, and for once, it had said my name correctly.